Story disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction and is intended for entertainment purposes only. The content includes dark themes, horror elements, and fictional depictions of rituals and sacrifices that are purely imaginative and not reflective of any real-life practices or beliefs. Viewer discretion is advised. This video is not suitable for younger audiences, and parental guidance is recommended. The story does not endorse or promote any harmful behavior, violence, or dangerous activities. Please note that all characters, events, and settings are entirely fictional and created for the purpose of storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. In this final episode, Kofi and Amina face relentless trials as they descend into the heart of darkness and battle against overwhelming odds. From fierce confrontations with nightmarish guardians and a dark sorcerer to navigating a labyrinth designed to break their will, each chapter pushes them to their limits. Betrayal and shocking revelations test their trust, while the shadowy influence of an ancient entity, the Sovereign of Shadows, grows ever stronger. As they rally allies and confront their greatest fears, a climactic showdown unfolds that will determine the fate of their world. With hope hanging by a thread, can Kofi and Amina overcome the darkness, or will the shadows consume all? Stay tuned for a tale filled with courage, sacrifice, and the fight for survival. Kofi and Amina fell through the chasm, the darkness enveloping them completely. The stone in Kofi's pouch was now emitting an erratic, pulsing glow, its energy fluctuating wildly. They landed with a jarring thud on a bed of ancient bones, the impact knocking the breath from their lungs. As they struggled to their feet, the surroundings came into view, a vast underground cavern, illuminated by the eerie light of the stone. The cavern was filled with remnants of ancient civilizations, their ruins now overgrown with strange, luminescent fungi and twisted vegetation. In the center of the cavern stood an altar, covered in ancient runes and surrounded by a circle of burning torches. The altar pulsed with a dark, malevolent energy, and on its surface lay an intricately carved stone tablet, glowing with an ominous light. A figure emerged from the shadows, a dark sorcerer, his eyes glowing with a sickly green light. He was cloaked in tattered robes, and in his hand, he held a staff adorned with a grotesque skull. "So, the heroes have arrived," the sorcerer said, his voice a chilling whisper. "You've come to close the gate, but you are too late. The true power lies within the altar, and with it I will bring forth the ancient darkness." Kofi's heart raced as he recognized the sorcerer from old legends, one of the primordial beings bound to guard the gate. The sorcerer's presence was a dire threat, and their situation was growing increasingly desperate. "We won't let you unleash the darkness," Kofi declared, drawing his blade. "We'll stop you, no matter what it takes." The sorcerer laughed, a sound like the clanging of chains. "You are welcome to try. But first, you must face the guardians of this realm." From the shadows emerged grotesque creatures, twisted, nightmarish forms with eyes that glowed with a sickly light. They were the guardians, the sorcerer's loyal minions, and their very presence radiated malevolent energy. A fierce battle erupted, the creatures swarming Kofi and Amina. Kofi fought with all his might, his blade slicing through the monstrous forms, but the creatures seemed to multiply, their numbers overwhelming. Amina, struggling to control the stone's unstable energy, raised her hand and unleashed a wave of light that temporarily pushed back the guardians. The sorcerer's laughter echoed through the cavern as he chanted an incantation, and the altar's energy surged, sending a shockwave through the cavern. The shockwave threw Kofi and Amina to the ground, and the stone's light flickered dangerously. The altar began to glow brighter, its power reaching a crescendo. The guardians closed in, their eyes fixed on the stone, their hunger for its power evident. Kofi and Amina were on the verge of exhaustion, their strength waning. But as the sorcerer prepared to complete the ritual, a sudden, blinding flash of light erupted from the stone, engulfing the cavern in a searing brilliance. The sorcerer's form twisted and writhed in the light, his spell breaking as the guardians disintegrated into shadows. The stone's power was overwhelming, its energy tearing through the cavern and shattering the altar. As the light subsided, Kofi and Amina lay on the ground, their bodies bruised and battered. The cavern was silent, the remnants of the altar scattered across the floor. The sorcerer was gone, his presence erased by the stone's unleashed power. Kofi struggled to his feet, his eyes scanning the ruins. The cavern's oppressive atmosphere had lifted, but the sense of dread remained. They had stopped the immediate threat, but the gate was still open, and the stone's power was far from stable. Amina approached the shattered altar, her face pale and weary. "We need to find a way to stabilize the stone and seal the gate. The darkness is still out there, and we can't let it escape." Kofi nodded, his gaze fixed on the remnants of the altar. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but they had come too far to turn back now. With the sorcerer defeated, they had gained a brief respite, but the true test of their resolve was yet to come. Kofi and Amina's victory over the sorcerer brought only fleeting relief. The cavern's silence was a stark contrast to the chaos they had just endured. As they began to explore the shattered remains of the altar, the ground beneath them started to tremble again. The vibrations grew stronger, and the very walls of the cavern seemed to pulse with an unseen force. A low, mournful wail filled the air, reverberating through the cavern. The sound was unsettling, like the cries of lost souls. Kofi and Amina exchanged worried glances as the echoes grew louder, converging on their location. The stone in Kofi's pouch began to glow intensely, its light casting eerie shadows on the cavern walls. Amina's eyes widened as she noticed the shadows forming shapes, ghostly figures trapped in eternal torment. These apparitions were not mere illusions, they were remnants of those who had tried and failed to confront the darkness before. The shadows twisted and coalesced into spectral forms, their hollow eyes fixed on Kofi and Amina. One of the apparitions, the ghostly woman with sorrowful eyes, reached out towards them, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Help us, break the curse, before it consumes all." The ghost's plea was both haunting and urgent. Kofi and Amina felt an overwhelming sense of dread. They knew that the presence of these spirits signaled something far more sinister than they had anticipated. "We need to find out what happened to these souls," Amina said, her voice trembling. "It might be the key to stopping the darkness." As they investigated the spectral forms, they uncovered a hidden chamber behind the altar ruins. Inside, they found ancient scrolls and artifacts inscribed with forbidden knowledge. The writings spoke of a dark prophecy, a cycle of despair bound to the abyssal gate, where every soul lost would strengthen the darkness that sought to escape. Kofi and Amina realized that their victory over the sorcerer was only a temporary setback. The prophecy revealed that the abyssal gate had been opened to summon a primordial entity, one that thrived on the despair of those who failed to close it. Before they could fully comprehend the gravity of the prophecy, the cavern's walls began to shift, revealing a new passageway. The passage was narrow and winding, leading them deeper into the heart of the darkness. As they ventured further, the temperature dropped, and a palpable sense of malevolence filled the air. They emerged into a massive underground chamber, where an enormous, pulsating heart-like structure hung from the ceiling. This was the core of the abyssal gate, throbbing with dark energy. The heart was surrounded by chains and runes, each symbol glowing with an ominous light. At the base of the heart stood a pedestal, and on it lay an ancient tome bound in dark leather. The tome's cover was embossed with a symbol that matched the runes on the chains. Kofi approached it cautiously, his hand trembling as he reached for the book. As he touched the tome, a surge of dark energy erupted, and the chains around the heart began to writhe. The heart's pulsations quickened, and the chamber filled with a blinding light. The very essence of the abyssal gate was being awakened, and the darkness that had been held at bay was beginning to seep through. A chilling voice echoed through the chamber, "You seek to stop the darkness, but you only hasten its release. The cycle of despair is unending." The heart's pulsations became erratic, and shadows began to converge on the pedestal. Kofi and Amina realized that they were not alone. Emerging from the darkness were the lost souls from the cavern, their forms twisted and distorted, driven mad by their eternal torment. In a desperate bid to contain the darkness, Kofi opened the tome, revealing ancient spells and rituals. The dark energy surged, and the tome began to glow with an intense, corrupting light. The ritual described within the tome required a sacrifice, one that would bind the darkness and seal the abyssal gate forever. Kofi and Amina knew that completing the ritual would require a tremendous personal sacrifice. They had to make a choice, either sacrifice themselves or find another way to stop the darkness from consuming their world. The chamber grew colder, and the spirits' wails grew louder. The heart's throbbing was now deafening, and the entire chamber seemed to be collapsing inward. The darkness was closing in, threatening to envelop everything. Kofi and Amina stood at the precipice of their decision, the weight of the world resting on their shoulders. As they prepared to make their choice, the shadows converged on them, and the very essence of the abyssal gate began to envelop the chamber in a suffocating darkness. The chamber was in chaos. As the heart's throbbing grew louder, Kofi and Amina felt the oppressive weight of the darkness closing in. The lost souls' screams echoed through the chamber, mingling with the heart's rhythmic pulses. Desperation drove them to the tome. Kofi flipped through its pages, frantically searching for a solution. The rituals were complex and required not just a physical sacrifice but also a powerful act of will and unity. Amina's eyes met Kofi's, the silent understanding passing between them. They had to act quickly. They needed to perform the ritual together, but the darkness was relentless. Suddenly, the heart's pulsations synchronized with the shadows in the chamber, forming eerie shapes that danced around them. The spectral forms were not just haunting, they were manifestations of their deepest fears and insecurities. Kofi saw visions of his past failures, while Amina was confronted with images of her loved ones in peril. The shadows closed in, pushing them to the edge of despair. Kofi and Amina had to confront their fears to proceed. With a resolve born of desperation, they began the ritual. They chanted the ancient incantations from the tome, their voices trembling but unwavering. As they chanted, the heart's energy surged violently, and the chains around it tightened. The shadows attacked with renewed fury, and the chamber's walls began to crack and crumble. The heart's dark energy was feeding off their fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. But just as they neared the ritual's climax, a deafening roar shook the chamber. The gatekeeper, thought to be defeated, re-emerged from the darkness. Its form was more formidable than before, empowered by the chaos and the failed attempts of previous challengers. The gatekeeper's eyes blazed with a malevolent fire as it advanced towards them. "You dare defy the gate's true master? You will be consumed by the darkness you seek to control." Kofi and Amina fought through the darkness and the pain, their determination driving them to complete the ritual. The tome's power began to intensify, and a blinding light erupted from its pages, forcing the shadows and the gatekeeper back. But the light revealed something even more terrifying, a hidden chamber behind the heart, filled with dark artifacts and a monstrous entity bound within. The entity's eyes glowed with a sinister intelligence, and its mere presence sent waves of terror through Kofi and Amina. The ritual was only halfway complete, and the true test was yet to come. The heart's energy surged uncontrollably, and the entity began to stir, its chains rattling as it attempted to break free. The hidden chamber's walls were lined with ancient symbols, each glowing with an ominous light. The monstrous entity, bound by dark chains, roared in fury as it attempted to break free. The very essence of the abyssal gate was awakening, and the dark energy was more potent than ever. Kofi and Amina knew that completing the ritual was their only hope, but the entity's awakening posed an even greater threat. The chamber's air was filled with an oppressive darkness, and the ground beneath them began to crack and shift. The gatekeeper, now a towering figure of shadows, advanced towards them with an aura of overwhelming power. Its form was shifting, morphing into various nightmarish shapes. The spirit's wails grew louder, and the chamber's temperature dropped further. Kofi and Amina pressed on with the ritual, their voices merging into a powerful chant. The tome's light flared brightly, casting the shadows into sharp relief. The heart's energy fluctuated wildly, reacting to the ritual's power. But just as they were about to complete the final incantation, the dark entity broke free from its chains. Its monstrous form surged forward, its eyes filled with a malicious intent. The entity's presence was suffocating, and its dark energy lashed out, tearing through the chamber. The heart's pulsations became erratic, and the shadows converged on Kofi and Amina, threatening to overwhelm them. The gatekeeper, fully empowered, began to channel its energy into the dark entity, feeding it with the anguish and despair of the lost souls. Kofi and Amina were pushed to their limits. The chamber was collapsing around them, the walls disintegrating into a storm of dark energy. The ritual's light was flickering, its power waning as the dark entity's energy intensified. In a last-ditch effort, Kofi and Amina combined their remaining strength and chanted the final incantation with a renewed fervor. The tome's light blazed with a blinding intensity, and a wave of pure energy erupted from it, engulfing the dark entity and the gatekeeper. The chamber was filled with an ear-splitting roar as the darkness was forced back. The heart's pulsations slowed, and the shadows began to dissipate. The entity and the gatekeeper were enveloped in a maelstrom of light and darkness, their forms twisting and disintegrating. The blinding light subsided, leaving Kofi and Amina in a devastated chamber. The remnants of the heart and the dark entity were scattered across the floor, the oppressive darkness having been driven back but not entirely vanquished. The chamber's walls were shattered, and the air was thick with the remnants of dark magic. Kofi and Amina, exhausted and battered, surveyed the wreckage. The tome lay among the ruins, its pages scorched and its cover torn. The once mighty altar was now a pile of rubble, and the chamber's oppressive atmosphere had been replaced with a chilling silence. But the silence was deceptive. As they approached the tome, a sudden, piercing shriek echoed through the chamber. The sound was both haunting and maddening, filling their minds with a wave of terror and despair. Amina clutched her head, her face contorted in pain. What is happening? It feels like our minds are being attacked. Kofi tried to focus, but the shriek seemed to penetrate his thoughts, bringing forth his deepest fears and insecurities. The walls of the chamber appeared to close in on them, the very space warping and distorting as if trying to consume them. The tome's energy was unstable, and its dark power was affecting their minds. Kofi and Amina had to fight against the mental assault, their thoughts clouded by visions of their worst nightmares. The chamber itself seemed to be alive, its darkness seeping into their consciousness. As they struggled to maintain their sanity, the shriek intensified, and the chamber began to shift again. New passages and chambers appeared, each more twisted and malevolent than the last. The very nature of the abyssal gate was warping reality itself. The environment became a labyrinth of darkness, with shifting walls and illusions designed to disorient and terrify. Kofi and Amina had to navigate this nightmarish landscape while battling the psychological effects of the dark magic. They stumbled upon a chamber filled with mirrors, each reflecting distorted and nightmarish versions of themselves. The reflections taunted and mocked them, exploiting their insecurities and fears. Kofi saw himself as a failure, unable to protect those he loved, while Amina was confronted with visions of her loved ones in agony. In a moment of clarity, Kofi realized that the mirrors were a test, a way to break their will and force them to succumb to the darkness. He grabbed Amina's hand and pulled her away from the mirrors, focusing on their mission and their bond as allies. "We can't let it break us," Kofi said, his voice filled with determination. "We have to stay focused. The darkness is trying to make us doubt ourselves." With renewed resolve, they pressed on through the labyrinth, fighting against the dark magic's attempts to drive them mad. They navigated through the twisted passages, their minds pushed to the brink as they searched for a way out. After what felt like an eternity, Kofi and Amina emerged from the nightmarish labyrinth into a new chamber. The chamber was vast and ominous, with a dark throne at its center. The throne was adorned with sinister runes, and the air was filled with an oppressive aura. At the throne's base lay a figure cloaked in shadows, its form indistinguishable. As they approached, the figure slowly rose, revealing itself as a familiar face, one of the keepers who had vanished earlier. The keeper's eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and a cruel smile twisted their lips. "So, you've made it this far. I must commend you for your perseverance. But you've walked straight into my trap." Kofi and Amina's eyes widened in shock. You were working with the darkness all along?" Kofi demanded. The keeper laughed, a cold, unsettling sound. "Not just working with it. I am the darkness's agent. I've been guiding you, pushing you towards your own destruction. The abyssal gate's true power lies in the despair of those who seek to defeat it." The keeper revealed a hidden mechanism in the throne, causing the chamber's walls to shift and reveal even darker passages. The chamber began to collapse, and dark energy surged from the throne, threatening to engulf them. Kofi and Amina tried to confront the keeper, but the dark energy was overwhelming. The keeper's betrayal had been a calculated move designed to exploit their every weakness and drive them to despair. As the chamber crumbled around them, Kofi and Amina were separated by the shifting walls and dark energy. They fought their way through the chaos, but the keeper's malevolent laughter echoed through the... Kofi and Amina, separated and disoriented, each faced their own trials. Kofi found himself in a chamber filled with shifting, razor-sharp shadows. The shadows lashed out, slicing through the air and forcing him to navigate a deadly maze. Amina, on the other hand, was trapped in a chamber of illusions. The walls were covered in reflective surfaces that distorted reality, showing her nightmarish visions and creating illusions that seemed almost real. She had to navigate through the illusions and find a way to escape. Both were determined to reunite and finish the ritual, but the darkness seemed determined to keep them apart. Kofi fought his way through the shadows, using his agility and strength to avoid the deadly attacks. He found a hidden passage that led to a room with ancient symbols. Meanwhile, Amina focused on dispelling the illusions. She used her knowledge of the dark magic to identify and break the enchantments. As she succeeded in dispelling one illusion after another, she found a hidden door leading to another chamber. Their paths eventually converged in a chamber filled with a swirling vortex of dark energy. The vortex was drawing in everything around it, threatening to tear the chamber apart. The keeper's malevolent presence was felt stronger than ever, and the dark entity's power seemed to be amplifying. Kofi and Amina worked together, using their combined knowledge and strength to combat the vortex. They had to channel their energy into the ritual's final incantation while resisting the dark magic's attempts to tear them apart. The vortex's energy intensified, and the darkness threatened to consume them. They could feel the despair and anguish of the lost souls, adding to their already immense burden. But with their combined willpower, they managed to complete the incantation. A blinding light erupted from the vortex, pushing back the dark energy and revealing a hidden chamber. The heart's power was at its peak, and the entity was on the verge of breaking free. The final battle was at hand. The hidden chamber was a massive void, filled with swirling darkness and a colossal heart pulsating with dark energy. The heart was connected to the abyssal gate, and the dark entity's presence was more palpable than ever. Kofi and Amina faced the heart, their final challenge ahead. They could see the dark entity stirring within the heart, its monstrous form struggling against its bindings. The air was thick with dark magic, and the heart's pulsations were erratic and powerful. The keeper, now fully empowered, stood beside the heart, channeling dark energy into the entity. "You think you can stop this? The darkness will consume everything." Kofi and Amina knew that they had to act quickly. They had to disrupt the keeper's control and complete the ritual to seal the abyssal gate once and for all. The heart's energy was a formidable obstacle, but their determination was unwavering. As they approached the hut, the dark entity began to exert its influence, manifesting nightmarish visions and creating powerful illusions to hinder their progress. The darkness was closing in, and the chamber's walls began to shift and warp. Kofi and Amina fought through the darkness, using their combined strength and willpower to counter the entity's attacks. The keeper's dark magic was relentless, but they managed to disrupt its control over the hut. With the keeper's focus broken, the hut's energy surged uncontrollably. Kofi and Amina seized the moment, channeling their energy into the final incantation. The tome's light blazed with a blinding intensity, and a powerful wave of energy erupted, engulfing the hut and the dark entity. The hut's pulsation slowed, and the dark entity roared in fury as it was pulled back into the abyssal gate. The chamber was filled with a tremendous explosion of light and darkness, and the hut's energy was forcibly sealed. The keeper's cries of rage echoed through the chamber as they were consumed by the dark energy. The chamber began to collapse, and Kofi and Amina had to fight their way through the chaos to escape. Kofi and Amina emerged from the collapsing chamber, their bodies battered and their minds weary. The once ominous darkness had receded, leaving behind a sense of uneasy calm. They had managed to seal the abyssal gate, but the battle had taken its toll. They found themselves back in the cavern, now eerily quiet. The echoes of the lost souls had faded, and the oppressive darkness had lifted. The tome lay among the ruins, its power seemingly spent. As they examined the remnants of the chamber, Kofi and Amina realized that the darkness had left more than physical scars. The psychological toll was immense, and they had to confront their own inner demons. The keeper's betrayal and the dark entity's influence had shaken their beliefs and tested their resolve. They had faced their worst fears and insecurities, and the ordeal had left them with lingering doubts and anxieties. But their bond was stronger than ever. They had survived the darkness and emerged victorious, but they knew that the scars of their journey would remain. The abyssal gate had been sealed, but the experience had changed them forever. As they prepared to leave the cavern, they found a hidden chamber containing ancient relics and texts. These artifacts held knowledge about the abyssal gate and its origins. Kofi and Amina decided to study them, hoping to gain a deeper understanding of the darkness they had faced. Their journey was far from over. The darkness had been contained, but the knowledge they had uncovered revealed that there were other threats lurking in the shadows. They had to remain vigilant and continue their fight against the encroaching darkness. Kofi and Amina delved into the ancient relics and texts they had discovered. The artifacts contained valuable information about the abyssal gate and its dark origins. They learned that the abyssal gate was not an isolated phenomenon but part of a larger network of dark forces that sought to invade their world. The texts revealed that the gatekeeper was merely a pawn in a grander scheme orchestrated by a powerful, ancient entity known as the Sovereign of Shadows. This entity had been manipulating events from the shadows, seeking to unleash chaos and darkness upon the world. The texts also spoke of a prophecy, a forewarning of a great battle between light and darkness. Kofi and Amina realized that their battle was just one part of a much larger conflict. They had to prepare for the coming storm and gather allies to face the emerging threat. As they studied the texts, they encountered disturbing revelations. The Sovereign of Shadows had the power to corrupt and manipulate individuals, turning them into instruments of darkness. This revelation explained the Keeper's betrayal and the Darkness's ability to exploit their fears. Kofi and Amina knew that they had to act quickly. They needed to warn others and rally support to confront the looming threat. The knowledge they had gained was both a beacon of hope and a heavy burden. They decided to return to the city and seek out allies who could help them in their quest. The journey ahead was fraught with danger, but they were determined to face the darkness head-on. Kofi and Amina returned to the city, where they began to gather allies to aid them in their quest. They reached out to trusted friends, scholars, and mystics, sharing their knowledge about the Sovereign of Shadows and the looming threat. Their efforts were met with skepticism and disbelief. Many dismissed their warnings as the ravings of individuals who had faced too much darkness. But Kofi and Amina persisted, presenting evidence from the ancient texts and recounting their own harrowing experiences. Gradually, they managed to convince a few key figures to join their cause. These allies included a powerful sorceress, a skilled warrior, and a scholar with deep knowledge of ancient lore. Together, they formed a diverse and formidable team. As they prepared for their mission, they discovered that the darkness was not only a distant threat but had already begun to infiltrate the city. Strange occurrences and unsettling events began to plague the city, suggesting that the sovereign's influence was spreading. Kofi and Amina's team worked tirelessly to uncover and address these dark manifestations. They faced attacks from corrupted individuals and battled supernatural forces that sought to undermine their efforts. Despite the challenges, their determination remained unwavering. They knew that their fight against the darkness was far from over and that the true battle was yet to come. The city was in turmoil. Strange occurrences and dark manifestations had become increasingly frequent. Kofi and Amina's team worked tirelessly to address these threats, but the darkness seemed to be one step ahead. Their efforts were further complicated by the presence of infiltrators, individuals who had been corrupted by the Sovereign of Shadows and were working against them from within. These infiltrators were skilled and dangerous, using their knowledge of the city to sabotage the team's efforts. The team discovered that one of their own allies had been compromised. The sorceress, who had initially been a trusted member, was revealed to be an agent of the Sovereign. Her betrayal had devastating consequences, and she used her dark magic to create chaos and confusion. Kofi and Amina had to confront the sorceress, who was now a powerful and malevolent force. The battle was intense and brutal, with dark magic clashing against their own powers. The sorceress's betrayal and the subsequent chaos left them shaken and vulnerable. With the sorceress defeated, they had to regroup and assess the damage. The infiltration had exposed their weaknesses and highlighted the severity of the threat they faced. The Sovereign's influence was stronger than ever, and they had to act quickly to prevent further damage. Kofi and Amina's team continued their fight against the darkness, but the Sovereign of Shadows' influence was growing stronger. The city was becoming increasingly chaotic, and the dark manifestations were becoming more powerful and frequent. They learned of a dark ritual that was being prepared by the Sovereign, a ritual that would amplify the dark energy and bring about a cataclysmic event. The ritual was to be conducted at a hidden location deep within the city's underbelly. The team embarked on a dangerous mission to locate and disrupt the ritual. They faced numerous obstacles, including traps and dark creatures summoned by the Sovereign. The journey took them through treacherous underground passages and forgotten tunnels. As they approached the ritual's location, they encountered the Sovereign's most formidable lieutenants, powerful beings of darkness who were tasked with protecting the ritual. The battles were fierce and unforgiving, with each encounter pushing them to their limits. Despite their efforts, they arrived at the ritual site to find it already in progress. The dark energy was surging, and the Sovereign of Shadows was at the heart of the ritual, channeling immense power to complete it. Kofi and Amina had to confront the Sovereign and disrupt the ritual before it was too late. The confrontation was a battle of wills and power, with the Sovereign's dark magic clashing against their own. The ritual was reaching its climax, when the Sovereign of Shadows was channeling dark energy to complete it. The chamber was filled with swirling shadows and an oppressive darkness that threatened to consume everything. Kofi and Amina fought their way through the dark energy, their determination and strength tested to their limits. The Sovereign was a formidable opponent, wielding dark magic with devastating precision. The final confrontation was a battle of epic proportions. The Sovereign's dark energy was overwhelming, but Kofi and Amina's combined willpower and resolve allowed them to hold their ground. They had to use every ounce of their strength and knowledge to counter the Sovereign's attacks. As the battle raged on, they discovered a weakness in the Sovereign's power, a vulnerability that could be exploited to disrupt the ritual. They had to act quickly and decisively to exploit this weakness and prevent the dark energy from reaching its full potential. With a coordinated effort, they managed to disrupt the ritual and weaken the sovereign's power. The dark energy began to destabilize, and the chamber was filled with a blinding light as the ritual was undone. The Sovereign of Shadows roared in fury as its power was diminished. The dark energy surged uncontrollably, and the chamber began to collapse. Kofi and Amina had to escape before the collapsing chamber engulfed them. Kofi and Amina emerged from the collapsing chamber, their bodies exhausted but victorious. The dark energy had been disrupted, and the ritual was undone. The Sovereign of Shadows had been weakened, but the fight was far from over. The city was in ruins, and the dark manifestations had left their mark. The aftermath of the battle was a grim reminder of the darkness that had been unleashed. Kofi and Amina surveyed the destruction, their hearts heavy with the weight of their victory. They knew that the fight against the darkness was not over. The Sovereign of Shadows was still a threat, and there were lingering remnants of dark magic that needed to be addressed. They had to work to restore balance and ensure that the darkness did not return. With the help of their allies, they began the arduous task of rebuilding and healing. They worked to repair the damage caused by the darkness and to support those affected by the chaos. Their journey had left them changed, but they were determined to see it through to the end. Chapter 30: The New Dawn. As the city began to recover, Kofi and Amina took stock of their journey. The darkness had been confronted, and the Sovereign of Shadows had been weakened, but the scars of their battle were still evident. The ancient texts and relics they had discovered revealed that the darkness was not fully vanquished but had been contained. They had to remain vigilant and continue their fight against the encroaching shadows. Kofi and Amina, now seasoned warriors, prepared for the challenges ahead. Their bond was stronger than ever, and their resolve was unwavering. They had faced unimaginable darkness and emerged victorious, but they knew that their journey was far from over. As they looked towards the future, they knew that the fight against the darkness was a never-ending battle. But with their newfound knowledge and allies, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The new dawn brought hope and determination. Kofi and Amina were prepared to continue their fight, knowing that their journey was a testament to their strength and resilience.